I know what you're thinking. Another herb video, you've seen the titles, ancient secrets, doctors hate this one trick, and most of the time, you're right to be skeptical. Most of that content doesn't hold up. This one does. I'll show you why in the first 2 minutes. There is a plant root. It costs $15. And in a 2019 double-blind clinical trial, men who took it for 8 weeks saw testosterone levels rise by 14.7%. Cortisol, the hormone that has been suppressing that testosterone, dropped by 23% in a separate study. Those are not vague claims. Those are numbers from controlled trials published in peer-reviewed journals. More than 50 trials, actually. And your doctor has almost certainly never mentioned this plant once. That has a specific reason. I'll explain it at the 13-minute mark. It changes how you think about everything you've been told about aging after 60. For now, let me show you what this plant is, where it comes from, and exactly what it does inside your body. Its scientific name is Withania somnifera. In Sanskrit, it is called Ashwagandha. That translates roughly as the smell of a horse, which sounds odd until you understand the context. In Ayurvedic medicine, the horse was the symbol of raw physical power. Naming a remedy after a horse was not an insult. It was the highest compliment a physician could give a medicine. The written records go back 3,500 years. The Karaka Samhita, one of the foundational texts of Ayurvedic medicine, classified ashwagandha as a rasayana, a category reserved for compounds that restore vitality in aging bodies. It was prescribed specifically for older men, not for illness. For the gradual loss of strength and sharpness that comes with age. That's a specific use case, and it is exactly what we are discussing. But what is notable is that India was not alone. Arab physicians in the 10th and 11th centuries wrote about a root from the subcontinent used for stamina and mental clarity in older men. Ibn Sina, the Persian physician whose medical encyclopedia was standard reading in European universities for 600 years, described plants in the same adaptogen family for managing exhaustion and stress in aging men. Ancient Egyptian papyri document its use. Roman texts reference it coming through trade routes from the east. These cultures had no meaningful contact with each other. They were not comparing notes. But across 3,500 years and a dozen civilizations, they all landed on the same plant for the same problem. That's not superstition, that's observation. Millions of men over thousands of years paid attention to what worked and wrote it down. Modern clinical science is better at measuring why something works. But identifying what works in the first place, the ancient physicians had a head start of 3,000 years on any pharmaceutical research team when it came to this plant. The question is what exactly they knew, and to understand that, you need to know what is happening inside a man's body after 60. Most men do not name what is happening to them in their 60s, they just live with it. They feel the fatigue that sleep does not fully fix. They notice muscle that does not come back the way it used to, no matter how much protein they eat. Sleep is lighter than it was 10 years ago, and they wake at 3 in the morning for no reason they can identify. Their mood sits a little lower. Their drive takes longer to find in the morning. Men chalk this up to age and they move on. But there is a specific physiological mechanism behind all of it. Starting around 45 and accelerating after 60, testosterone drops between 1 and 2% every year. At the same time, cortisol, the stress hormone, tends to rise. The ratio between these two hormones shifts, and that shift is behind almost every complaint I just described. Your body produces cortisol when it is under stress. It is a useful hormone in short bursts. But chronically elevated cortisol has a direct suppressive effect on testosterone production. The two hormones compete for the same precursor molecules. When cortisol stays high, testosterone does not get made. This is not obscure knowledge. It is in every endocrinology textbook. Doctors know it. What does not get communicated clearly is this. The cortisol to testosterone ratio is not fixed. It responds to specific compounds, documented over thousands of years of human use, and confirmed in the last decade by clinical research, that shift this ratio back toward where it was. Ashwagandha is the best studied of them. Here is what the trials actually show. 5 mechanisms, 5 sets of studies, specific numbers. Mechanism 1. Cortisol. Ashwagandha contains a class of compounds called withanolides, steroidal lactones that act directly on the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, the system that controls your cortisol output. A 2019 double-blind placebo-controlled trial, published in the journal Medicine, gave 58 participants 240 milligrams of ashwagandha extract daily for 60 days. Cortisol dropped by 23% in the treatment group. The placebo group showed no significant change, 23%, from a plant root. In 2 months. For a man over 60, that is not a minor shift. Lowering cortisol by that margin removes one of the primary brakes on testosterone production, which brings us to Mechanism 2. Mechanism 2. Testosterone. A 2019 randomized controlled trial published in the American Journal of Men's Health followed 57 men between 40 and 70 years old. The group taking ashwagandha root extract saw testosterone levels rise by 14.7% over 8 weeks. The placebo group saw an increase of 2.2%. A separate study in the Journal of the International Society of Sports Nutrition found increases between 15 and 17% in middle-aged and older men over the same time frame. That's a consistent finding across independent research groups using different populations in different countries. For a plant extract that costs $15 a month, those numbers are difficult to ignore. Mechanism 3. Muscle and strength. After 60, most men are losing muscle, whether they feel it or not. The medical term is sarcopenia, the gradual, largely invisible loss of muscle tissue that accelerates in the 6th and 7th decades of life. It is one of the leading drivers of physical decline, falls, and loss of independence in older men. Most men do not notice it until it is already significant. 2 separate clinical trials in 2015 and 2021 measured ashwagandha's effects on muscle mass and strength in men doing resistance training. Both found statistically significant improvements in lean muscle mass, grip strength, and recovery speed compared to placebo groups. These trials were not measuring whether ashwagandha helps elite athletes perform better. They were measuring whether it helps average middle-aged men rebuild something that aging is quietly taking from them. The answer in both trials was yes. Mechanism 4. Sleep. This one surprised me when I first went through the research. Ashwagandhas withanolides appear to act on GABA receptors in the brain, the same receptors targeted by many prescription sleep medications, including benzodiazepines. The difference is there is no dependency risk and no next-day grogginess. A 2019 randomized controlled trial published in Curious gave participants ashwagandha root extract for 8 weeks and measured sleep quality, time to fall asleep, and alertness on waking. All 3 improved significantly compared to placebo. A follow-up study the following year focused specifically on adults over 65 and found the same pattern. For men in their 60s and 70s, where broken sleep is one of the most consistent complaints and where prescription sleep aids carry real risks of dependency and cognitive side effects, this is a practical finding. A 2017 study in the Journal of Dietary Supplements tracked participants on ashwagandha supplementation for 8 weeks and measured 4 cognitive domains: memory, executive function, attention, and information processing speed. All 4 improved significantly compared to placebo. In a demographic where cognitive decline is the fear that does not get named out loud, that is worth knowing. Before I explain why none of this has made it into your doctor's office, which is the part that makes the whole picture clear, the link in the description leads to a free guide on the ancestral remedies with the strongest clinical backing for men over 60. Ashwagandha is in it, along with 6 others. No products, no pitch, just the compounds, the evidence, and dosing. It is there if you want it. Now, the reason your doctor has never prescribed this. Ashwagandha cannot be patented. It's a plant. It grows in the ground. Anyone can cultivate it. extract it, and sell it. No pharmaceutical company can own it. They can't charge $400 a month for a prescription that only they can fill. This is not a conspiracy, it's a financial reality. The pharmaceutical industry's model runs on intellectual property. A company develops a compound, patents it, funds the clinical trials needed to get it approved, then has roughly 20 years of exclusive sales to recoup that investment. The system works well for synthetic drugs. It doesn't work at all for things that already exist in nature and cannot be owned, which means there is almost no financial incentive to fund large-scale human trials on ashwagandha, publish the results in high-impact journals, and train physicians on the findings. The research can't generate the return that would justify the investment. So the 50-plus clinical trials that exist are funded by universities, Indian research institutions, and smaller supplement companies. They don't have the distribution infrastructure that pharmaceutical research does. They don't appear in the continuing medical education courses your doctor takes each year. They don't receive the journal placement that industry-funded research gets. Your doctor isn't withholding this from you. He probably genuinely doesn't know. I find that more frustrating than if it were deliberate, honestly. A deliberate system you can push back against. An accidental one just quietly continues. The result is the same. A well-documented, inexpensive compound with 3,500 years of human use and more than 50 clinical trials behind it sits outside the conversation most men are having with their doctors about what happens after 60. Now you know it exists. So let's talk about how to actually use it. 4 things matter: form, dose, timing, and what to expect. Form. The clinical trials that produced the results I described used a root extract standardized to 5% with analytes. That's the number to look for on the label. If the label does not specify with analyte percentage, you are almost certainly looking at whole root powder, cheaper, less concentrated, and the research behind it is inconsistent. The standardized extract costs a bit more. It is worth it. Dose. Most trials use between 300 and 600 milligrams daily. The 600 milligram studies show slightly stronger results across most outcomes, but 300 milligrams is where the sleep and cortisol research is most consistent. Start at 300 milligrams, give it 6 weeks. If you are not noticing anything, move to 600 milligrams. Timing. For sleep quality, take it in the evening with dinner. For cortisol regulation and energy through the day, morning works better. Some men split the dose, 300 milligrams with breakfast and 300 milligrams with dinner. Both approaches are supported by the research. What to expect and when. This is not a stimulant. You will not feel anything tomorrow. Most men in the clinical trials reported the clearest effects around week 6. Some noticed better sleep quality first. Others noticed energy and motivation before sleep improved. The order varies. The direction does not. One practical note: ashwagandha modestly lowers blood pressure in some people. If you are already on antihypertensive medication, mention it to your doctor before starting, not because it is dangerous, but because your medication dosing may need adjustment if your blood pressure drops further. That's it. No special protocol, no expensive stack. A plant root that costs $15 a month, standardized to 5% with anolides, 300 to 600 milligrams a day, taken with food. For 3,500 years, men figured out the same thing without any clinical trial infrastructure. They just watched what worked. There is a gap between what the medical system has financial incentive to promote and what actually works for men over 60. That gap is real. It has been widening for decades, and the cost is paid quietly by men who were never told what existed. Ashwagandha is one of the better documented compounds in that gap. Not the only one. Not a cure for everything. But 3,500 years of human observation and more than 50 clinical trials pointing in the same direction is not something to dismiss. The free guide in the description covers this compound and 6 others with comparable evidence. It is there if you want a starting point beyond this video. We cover this kind of research every week on this channel. If that is useful to you, subscribe. We will keep going.